Good morning. I wanted to continue with the contemplation of this unified field, or more specifically, the unified framework, and apply it to the issue of the expanding and contracting universe. Now, approximately 100 years ago, Einstein had stated that there is a dark energy that's responsible for the expansion of the universe. And if we dig into that a little bit, then what he was really implying is that there's a dark energy, represented that by dE, which is such that the acceleration of galaxies, the moving of galaxies apart, is greater than the force of gravitational collapse of the universe due to its mass. And subsequently, what scientists have said is that the visible matter that we see around us, that constitutes the atoms and everything that's created as a result of that, is only 5% of the universe. So visible matter, represented by Vm, visible matter is 5%. They suggest that there's something called dark matter, which is 27%, and the remaining is something that they call dark energy, which is 68%. Now, when we think about this a little more deeply, then what they're really suggesting in light of this unified framework here is that quantum particles, atoms, cells, and everything that is built on these is just 5%, and that's visible matter. And we have seen how each of these layers, the potential seed state represented by the electromagnetic field and other fields, through cells and therefore any kind of living plant, animal, human, and so on, is an output of this equation here, or this framework. But also there's something called dark matter, which could be 27%, which, if we think about it in context of this framework, could be explained because any kind of matter, be it visible or dark matter, is not form-based, but it's function-based, and these functions are captured in the meta layers, and specifically in this meta layer 1 here, where we have deep signatures of functions, organizational signatures of functions that precipitate to form matter, or the different functions of matter, if you will. So we could hypothetically say that the dark matter is a result of this functional based orientation, which we do not have the instrumentation to really detect. Similarly, this dark energy could hypothetically be contained in this entire construct of the meta layers, because essentially, from our point of view, this is an energy that's behind the precipitation of matter. But let's get a little more concrete. If we're saying that this entire construct of these meta layers is this dark energy, then what's kind of the pivotal aspect of it? And I suggest that the pivotal aspect is what we're calling M2, because what's in M3 is the essential aspects of light. So the 4 deep essences of presence, power, knowledge, harmony, which manifest at some subtle energetic level as these sets of presence, power, knowledge, and harmony. So there's a multiplication of the meaning of these essential qualities in these sets that have elements that are aligned with each of the 4 fundamental essences of presence, power, knowledge, and harmony. And as we've seen, this can directly create the very structure of visible matter. And so M2 is kind of the core. So if we translate this notion of dark energy, I could hypothesize that dark energy is somehow proportional to M2, but then to get more specific, what Einstein was saying was that dark energy is responsible for the expansion of the universe. And in this framework, what we're saying is that so long as there's a multiplication of the elements in M2 as depicted here, so long as these sets of M2 keep growing, then we continue to see a complexification of organization showing up at subsequently more intricate and diverse layers, all organized around these four principles. And so we could further specify this, that dark energy is a function of the growth of M2. And so bringing it back to this equation here, relating this, hopefully, insight into this notion of accelerating galaxies. Now, even the accelerating galaxies is only the visible aspect of this energy, but what is this energy that may be responsible for the galaxies accelerating apart? And that's what I'm suggesting is tied to this growth of M2. And so I could represent this as a threshold function by saying that so long as we have a condition in the universe which is all explained by this one unified framework, so long as we have a condition where the growth of M2 is above or equal to some threshold level, then we see this behavior of the acceleration of galaxies being greater than the gravitational collapse of the universe. And similarly, if we have this threshold function not being exceeded, so we have the dark energy being less than this threshold function, then we have the reverse phenomena of the gravitation, of the acceleration of galaxies being less than the gravitation of the universe, which would then lead to its collapse and, by some theories, a reconstituting and then an expanding out again. But the question is, why would I say that M2 is the link factor to the dark energy? And here, if we think about it in terms of the human collectivities, as suggested in the last video, up until this point here, from electromagnetic through cellular, there's an automaticity. The system itself is creating these layers of complexity. With the arrival of the human being, we have the action of will that we had represented by this notion of being able to exceed certain patterns that are the result of very limited untransformed sets. And so if we were to continue along the trajectory of being led in all our organization and in our social collectivities by an untransformed physical, vital, mental, and integral set, then we would never really take the possibility that's codified in light in these deep sets and express or manifest them in any tangible way. We would always be lost in fact, diminishing the set of M2. So what would happen if this were the only active kind of matrix or ingredient in this upward flow here, then rather than M2 expanding, we would see M2 contracting. And with that contraction, the very nature or purpose of the universe in this framework is, we're going against that, and therefore there's a collapse that's depicted over here. Whereas if we continue to complexify, meaning we break the barriers so that we overcome these seed patterns, and as I had suggested earlier, we then give energy to this recursive function so that xt feeds back into xu, then by definition we're creating a set of M2 that has more and more elements, and therefore the entire framework of field is being fed with a different kind of energy that then would result in this acceleration of galaxies being greater than the gravitational collapse of the universe. And we may say, adding in one more distinction here, that just as we have this action of will when human beings arise in this complex system, and we become observers while we're part of the system, we have a different kind of power in that we can direct the way that the system may advance. Similarly, there's a witness function M3 that we may hypothesize sets up certain constants in order to manage the system. One such constant being the threshold value of this aspect of dark energy that we're calling growth of M2, and so long as that's exceeded, then the universe will keep developing with more and more complexity, and that could be the rationale or the sense of how in fact we, being such intricate parts of this entire universe, the amount of power that we have and the amount of action that we take can influence, reverse influence this entire layers of energy that kind of precipitate down to inform how things continue to develop.